Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending the last session. Can everybody hear me? Good, good. For an overview of cyberbullying and mental health with Alex Robles. I'm going to read a little bit about Alex in case y'all don't know about her. Alex is a licensed professional counselor at MHMR, Concho Valley, and currently works at the Education Service Center Region 15 as the non-physician mental health professional. She received her LPC in 2021. Her experience includes working individually with parents and adolescents in outpatient setting, providing trauma-informed training and resources to Region 15 educators, and she loves being a parent herself. So welcome, Alex. Thank you for presenting today, and I hope everyone enjoys the information. So I'll pass it over to Alex.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Monica, for that introduction. Like she said, I'm a licensed professional counselor. I work for MHMR, but here at Region 15. And so today we're going to get started with sticks and stones may break my bones, but posts can also hurt me, right? An overview of cyberbullying and mental health. And with that being said, today is just intended to be an overview. Some of these things you might already know, but hopefully you're going to get some information about what cyberbullying really is, and some things that we can do as parents. And so in this presentation, what we hope to cover is we're going to have a brief discussion about mental health, because I know some of us might have some differing opinions of what that even means to us. We're also going to, like I said, define cyberbullying, because sometimes we are talking about things, but maybe it's better defined as something else. We're also going to talk about what research says. So we're going to talk about facts, right? Because again, what we're talking about, what we know is really important. We're going to talk about signs of cyberbullying, so how we might be able to identify that in our children, and then also discuss some interventions and resources that you as a parent can take home with you, right? And maybe even share with your friends. So, like I said, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me, right? That's a pretty common saying that I know I've heard before. And I chose this particular like play on words for the title because I think what this particular saying perpetuates is that hurtful words can cause physical pain and should thus be, ignored and disregarded. But I think what we know now, right, is that is like furthest from the truth, right? I know me personally, I can think of several words that have been said to me that were really hurtful. And I would even argue are more hurtful than the physical pain, because physical pain oftentimes is going to heal, right, without me even doing anything, right? My body's going to like take its natural course and do things. But words, right, can be hurtful. And if we don't know what to do about it, if we don't know how to actively like heal the wounds from those words, we can end up in a lot of trouble with our mental health and how life plays on forward from that. So again, that's just a little bit about where that came from. And I did want to open up the discussion to what mental health is to you. So maybe if you want to type something in the chat, I don't know, Monica's trying to help me monitor if any of you feel comfortable of even saying a few things about what mental health means to you.
Mental health for me is my insane, like what keeps me sane? Like what can I do for me not to explode on everybody, on my family, on my husband, on my coworkers? Like and then in the chat, I had Tammy share being able to work through hard situations.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. Like I said, mental health can be different for different people, but it looks like in both those instances, you really were talking about about mental health as what it is. Oh, I see some more things. Mental well-being, um, of our minds and our heart, right? Being able to maintain one's composure during a difficult time. And so a lot of that looks like maintenance type things. Well, I did want to give you a definition, and maybe like the perspective we'll kind of be talking about mental health today, right? So mental health is going to include all of those things that y'all just mentioned. It's going to be our emotional, our psychological, and social well-being, right? It's going to impact how we think, how we feel, how we act. And it definitely helps determine how we handle stress. So like Monica was saying, like, whether or not I can handle these things, like what's going on at home, whatever, things that we do at work, how it's going to affect how we relate to others, our ability to make healthy choices. And mental health is important at every stage of life, right? From childhood, adolescence through adulthood. And right now, I know we're kind of like focusing on, y'all are all parents, right? Or educators, right? That's why you're here. I know we're focusing on children's mental health, but also making sure that we're looking at a lens for ourselves too. And so although, again, these terms are often used interchangeably, poor mental health and mental illness are not the same thing. And that's something that I hope that you take away from today as well. A person can experience poor mental health and not be diagnosed with a mental illness, okay? Likewise, a person diagnosed with a mental illness can experience periods of physical, mental, and social well-being. And cyberbullying, being a victim of bullying, again, doesn't necessarily mean that we have a mental illness, right? But it can definitely impact our mental health. And so one of the big things that we talked about was having our mental health having a lot to do with our social well-being. And so when we think about kids, right, when we think about our children, what does their well-being look like, right? When we're thinking about how they're maintaining interactions and relationships. What does socializing look like for kids these days, like this day and age? And you can enter it in the chat. Feel free to come off mute.
Definitely text messages on Snapchat. I know my teenager likes Snap. He'll send snaps that I don't understand, like a picture of a random ceiling fan with an S, which they have their own code.
I also hear a lot of you know, kids making friends online doing gaming. Like, so they'll have people that they game with online. And so that looks a little different than people of our generations might be used to.
Definitely. And I saw in the chat that it's kind of global social media. So all of those things, everybody mentioned, the internet being kind of part of that. Yeah, typically when we would have thought maybe like sports and extracurricular activities, definitely that's still part of our children's well-being, but definitely interacting on social media. Someone said, yeah, they're able to interact in different ways, both positive and negative, right? And definitely participating in those groups and games like Greg mentioned too. I see Virginia mentioned that as well. Definitely. And so we definitely wouldn't be here if we weren't talking about cyberspace, right? If we weren't talking about social media. So social media, right? We have that now for our kids. It's something that is going to by definition, right, is going to be interactions among people in which they create, share, and or exchange information and ideas in virtual communities and networks. And so there's a lot of those out there these days, right? There's a lot of different forms of social media. Back in my day, right, and this may be aging me, but like the only form of social media we had was MySpace, right? And I remember that. But now it looks a little bit different. So here's some of the things some of the apps that you might see. And I apologize if my screen's a little small. If you're on your phone, you may not be able to see some of these logos. But I'm using a different app for my application. See these apps are getting us. But you might see I have 8 different apps there. How many of those apps can you name out of the 8? How many of those apps can you name? I'm just curious. 4. Greg says 4. 6, 5, 6. Nobody has all 8. 5. Okay. So I'm going to go through them. Facebook, right? We probably all know because I'm assuming that just 2, Virginia says. But yeah, I'm gonna Facebook. I'm gonna assume that we are all of the Facebook generation, right? Apparently, that's for old people now. That's not what the kids are into these days. Yes, old people. You're deeply offended, Greg. I am as well. I'm deeply offended. TikTok. That's what the kids like, right? But I'm also a millennial, and so I'm like supposed to be on there with the Gen Zers, right? Um, Miss Adams says 4, like Greg. The third one, that's Twitch, right? Has anyone ever heard of that? He mentioned gaming platforms, right? Where people might go and engage in gaming with their friends. Twitch is a big app, and that's where you might even see streamers. My partner's a streamer. Twitch has sent him like a duffel bag. That's the only reason I know what that is. Twitter, right? That's one. Snapchat, Monica mentioned that her child likes Snapchat. And if you see me going like this, it's because Monica and I are in the same room. I'm actually pointing to her. And Instagram, right? Most people probably know that one as well. And then those last 2, I think a lot of people may have had some issues with. Discord, that's another gaming platform. And then Reddit, that's just that's an online forum, right? When we're talking about social media, we're talking about any exchange of ideas. And so that's another one where people might be getting their information. But I thought that would just be kind of a good thing to see, like, hey, do we even know what's out there right now? What are these what are people consuming as far as social media? And I know that there's plenty more out there as well, and it'll continue to change. So I did mention that we do want to talk about what cyberbullying actually is, right? We talked about social media, ways of exchanging ideas, and I want to make sure that we clearly define what cyberbullying is. So cyberbullying is willful and repeated harm inflicted through the use of computers, cell phones, and other electronic devices. Okay, so what does that exactly mean, right? So willful, it means the behavior has to be deliberate, right? Not accidental. I know I can think of times just even throughout the day, maybe where I might accidentally, hurt someone's feelings because maybe I said something in a different tone before I had my coffee, or, and so willful is really a big part of that. Is it intentional? Sometimes we might even post things that we might not think are offensive, like, oh, someone posted a picture of me and I'm like, oh, that's offensive because I did not look good in that photo, right? But that might have been an accident. It has to be a willful and deliberate behavior. Another thing is that it needs to be repeated, right? So cyberbullying is when it's a pattern of behavior, okay? It's not just one isolated incident. That doesn't mean that isolated incidents shouldn't be addressed, right? That means that that's maybe a relational issue, right? Or again, an incidental situational issue, but it may not be better defined as cyberbullying. And then harm, right? The target must perceive that harm was inflicted, right? Because sometimes I might see things, again, I'm a sarcastic person. So I might say something and someone might be like, wow, that was kind of rude, but maybe that was my friend and that's how we talk to each other, right? And if my friend is the target of that particular interaction and they didn't see it as harmful, again, that's not going to be considered bullying either. And again, cyberbullying is going to take place with computers, cell phones, and other electronic devices. And again, that's what's going to differentiate cyberbullying from traditional bullying. So how are kids being cyberbullied? Being a victim of cyberbullying, as we know, is pretty common and can be a painful experience. And so some some people who cyberbully might send or forward mean text messages, and that might look like threatening to hurt someone or telling them to kill themselves. I know most recently, when I think of this particular bullet point, I think about they made a whole Hulu series, right, over a case, the Commonwealth versus Michelle Carter, where this person sent threatening text messages to someone that they cared about, right? And there ended up being some legal repercussions there, right? But definitely threatening to hurt someone or telling them to kill themselves is definitely a form of cyberbullying, especially again, when it's that repeated behavior. Posting mean or hateful names, comments, or content about any race, religion, ethnicity, or other personal characteristics online. Spreading lies and rumors about victims. So creating a mean or hurtful web page about someone, jealousy, bullying, right? Maybe like some retaliation. I think that's maybe like the most common thing that we think of when I think of cyberbullying, at least. Another thing is posting pictures of victims without their consent. So posting a mean or hurtful picture or video, and then also nude photo sharing, right? And I know that that's actually something that I'm hearing a lot more of, that educators, that parents are concerned about, is our children exchanging nude photos. And research does show that, again, studies range, but anywhere from 20 to 60% of teens have reported engaging in sexting. However, like teenagers believe, right, that about 90% of their peers are sexting in these particular studies that are listed there on stopbullying.gov. And so that's a lot, right? When you think that 90% of everyone that I'm engaging with is doing this activity, it's more likely that kids are going to want to engage in what everyone else is doing. And again, legal repercussions can happen for that. Other ways that cyberbullies might engage in these behaviors is to pretend that there are other people online to trick others. They may use a false identity profile, sometimes referred to as a sock puppet account, right? Or again, like I think catfish, right? There was a whole show made off of that, right? Off the premise of people having online profiles in order to trick other people. Another way would be revealing personal information, also known as doxing. So doxing is an abbreviated form of Word documents. It's online harassment used to, it says exact, I think that should be extract. Or revenge, threaten, and destroy privacy of individuals by making their personal information public. And when I think about that too, actually a coworker brought that up. They were like, I didn't know that that word existed, but I saw that people were actually doing that to J.K. Rowling, right? The author of Harry Potter, that people were doxing her, like giving out her personal information after they found out that maybe they had a differing opinion than she did. And so these are the ways that we are seeing cyberbullying take place. But what does the research say, right? So I think we all have kind of concepts of what cyberbullying looks like, what we might even think it looks like, within our schools. What does the research say? Well, Texas statistics say that about 8% of middle school students reported being electronically bullied, and 12.2% of high school students reported being electronically bullied, and that's as of 2019. And this is from the CDC. And so just knowing that here in Texas, basically 1 out of 10 of our kiddos is experiencing some sort of cyberbullying. And so one thing that another that research says also is that targets of cyberbullying have a greater chance of becoming bullies themselves, as well as being cyberbullied can lead to revenging as a way to cope, right? That might be why. They also have a greater risk of being bullied in return. Again, it results in that vicious cycle. And that's kind of how research defines bullies too, right? It suggests that there's 3 types. There's the cyberbully, the person that harasses other people online. There's the cyber victim, the person who experiences the harassment. And then there's the cyberbully victim, right? So the person who has experienced and initiated harassment online. And so knowing that, again, it can cause that vicious cycle. Cyberbullying is also associated with emotional stress, social anxiety, substance use, depressive symptoms, suicidal ideation, and suicide attempts. So again, when we talk about cyberbullying, we mentioned social media quite a bit, right? It says that 30% of young people who have been harassed say that it did happen through social media. However, a higher percentage, right, 40% say it happened through instant messaging. So we're thinking about just maybe texting even, right? And then 29% say that it happened when playing a game online. And before we move on to identifying some risk factors and signs of bullying, I wonder if anybody had any thoughts on some of those statistics that I just shared. Was anything shocking to you at all? Were you expecting anything different? No? Okay. Nobody has any comments on this. And that's pretty common. I think that those kind of reflect, of course, we think, of course, bullies might be more likely to bully other people as a form of retaliation. Of course, right? Like we talked about, it's going to impact our mental health. So no, it's not surprising that people who are cyberbullied are going to have an increased risk for stress. Virginia said, you noticed that the high school percentage was higher than middle school. Yeah, right. That is something that's been pretty consistent across literature too. So that was the Texas statistic. But when you look at the national statistics, it's the same. High school, there tends to be a higher percentage. And I actually saw somewhere that just in general, the percentage of people, like even when you're looking at adults, people who have experienced cyberbullying has doubled like in the last few years. And so we're seeing it more and more.
And that might be due to, Alexis, that high school students are older, so maybe they have more permission to have technology or access to technology as opposed to middle school students.
Definitely. That's a great point. Virginia was saying they might have some more freedom to and access to technology. So that's why it might be more prevalent. Definitely. Because, yeah, what were you going to say, Monica?
I was thinking high school students, like their hormones, like it's crazy. They're mean. So they can't control it. And so when I saw that, I did think, oh, high school there's a larger percentage, or it's a large, but I thought, oh, they're hormones, right? As to where like our little ones.
Yeah, developmentally too, right? Maybe we're dealing with like bigger social dynamics that might, again, make it more prevalent. Definitely. And so we talked about statistics, right? The prevalence, how cyberbullying happens. But we also want to know, what are the risk factors? Like who gets cyberbullied? What are some things that I want to look out for? And so signs that you might be dealing with a cyberbully is when your kid stops using the computer without explanation. They appear nervous or jumpy when getting on instant message. They're uneasy about going to school. They appear angry or depressed when they're on the computer. They might be secretive about what they do, and they're abnormally withdrawn from family and friends. And so these are signs that you might be dealing with the cyberbully on either end, really, right? When we're looking at, is my kid experiencing cyberbullying? Is my kid maybe even being a cyberbully? Because we also have to take that into consideration. A lot of times we want to think, okay, we've done what we can, right? So my kid won't be a cyberbully, right? Like I've taught them and given them the tools that they need to stray away from that behavior. But again, we also know that there are cyberbully victims. It perpetuates a cycle. So we want to look in these signs on either side, right? If we see a kid notice any of these things. Some risk factors associated with cyberbullying. So like Virginia was saying, just increased access, right? So 3+ hours a day of internet use is associated with cyberbullying. History of current experience of traditional bullying. So if a kid is being bullied, I saw, it's funny, when I was like researching for my presentation, it was like IRL, right? Because everything's abbreviated. So in real life, not that cyberbullying is fake, right? But in real life, right? If a student is experiencing bullying, they might be at a higher risk for cyberbullying. Relationship problems, right? Those can definitely be associated with cyberbullying. If I'm at school and I'm not getting along with my friends, I'm not getting along with people at home, right? I might be at a higher risk for being bullied. One that I thought was interesting from this particular study, it was a review. So it reviewed 43 different papers, and they did find an association with hyperactivity, inattention, behavior, and school-related problems. They kind of lump that all in one thing. So it doesn't mean if someone has a diagnosis of hyperactivity and attention disorder, right, that they're going to be cyberbullied, right? It doesn't mean that if someone has issues at school, they're going to be cyberbullied. But they did see kind of like a linked association with that. And then risky behavior on the internet in general, that was associated with cyberbullying as well. So what can I do, right? What are some things that we can do as adults, as parents? These are some things that I found that I thought were probably the most helpful. And these all came from the Cyberbullying Research Center. It's a great resource. And they had 10 steps, right? What to do when your child is cyberbullied. And like I said, they have some. Thank you, Monica. So they even have like little handouts. I don't know if you can see them because I'm in this fancy house. So it's not going to let you show my paper, but there's little handouts that have this information on there as well. But it tells you to first make sure that your child feels safe, right? If your kid is being cyberbullied, the safety and well-being of your child should be the first and foremost priority, right? You want to make sure that you convey unconditional support. Parents must demonstrate their children through both words and actions that we both desire the same thing. We both want for the cyberbullying to stop, right? Number two, it's talk with your child, right? And listen to them. You want to make sure that you're engaging your child in conversation about what's going on in a calm manner. Refrain from freaking out, right? And take the time to learn exactly what it is that happened from their perspective, right? And also to make sure that we don't minimize the situation or make excuses for the aggressor. Because I think that's something as adults too, we often think, well, bullying is just kind of part of life, right? There are some unkind people and you kind of have to grow a tough skin, right? No, we definitely want to make sure that we're talking with our kids and listening to them and validating those feelings. Collecting evidence, right? We definitely want to make sure that we print out and make screenshots or recordings of any conversations, videos, anything like that. We want to keep a record of all incidents to assist with any investigative process that might need to happen as well. Keep notes on location, frequency, severity of harm, any other third-party involvement or witnesses. And again, because in order for it to be cyberbullying, it's going to be a repetitive thing. So unfortunately, we're looking at the possibility of having to collect this evidence. When appropriate, right, working with the schools. All schools in the US have a bullying policy. And most will cover cyberbullying, and they do, right? We're here in Texas, we have safety teams. You are also able to report, right, forms of bullying anonymously. And so, again, working with the school, making sure that your child feels safe at school, if that's where their aggressor is, and the educators and everyone are involved, are responsible, and giving appropriate responses. Number 5 is refraining from contacting the parents of the one doing the bullying. Some parents confronted with accusations that their child is engaging in cyberbullying may become a little defensive, right? And therefore might not be receptive to your thoughts. We want to make sure that, again, how we're approaching things isn't creating more conflict, right? I know as parents that might even be like the first thing we jump to is my child, right, is being bullied. So that's my kid. You don't mess with my kid, right? But definitely, again, we want to refrain from doing that. Another thing that you can do is contact the content provider. So cyberbullying violates the terms of service of any legitimate platform. And so any website, app, phone company, anything like that, regardless of whether your child can even identify who's harassing them, because again, we're looking at sock puppet, right, profiles and things of that nature. You can report it to the content provider, and then they should be able to take them from the platform. And so I saw, I don't know, I'm looking at faces, might be losing people. Let's see. So of those things so far, any feedback? Are some of you still gonna come for your kid's aggressor either way? Or have you even thought about reporting things to platforms? I get spam and things like that all the time, like on social media, and I report it. And sometimes I'm like, why do I even do this? But hopefully it's keeping people that don't need to be on social media off of it.
So my thoughts were, so like that app that I didn't know what it was, and you said it was like for gamers, and like I thought, well, if my child was there and getting, bullied, cyberbullied, how would I know? And then who would I know? Like, is this contact the content provider? Like, I don't know how to get that information.
Yeah, so definitely. So like for that one, I would definitely say, of course, talking to your kids about what platform they might be on. Remember, if we're looking at them, maybe they're hiding their screen whenever maybe they're on that particular platform. You can Google just about anything, right? But if you don't know, there is like on cyberbullying.org/report, you can make a report there too. And they can even help you out if it's something that maybe you don't even know. But definitely like with Twitch or Discord, right? If you can at least find the name of the platform, those particular platforms, definitely, right? They're going to have essentially like a safety team like we do in schools, right? And they're going to have that for their platform, and they'll be able to investigate and again filter. I know, like when I've done things like on Instagram, I'll send a report like, no, this is spam, or no, this is inappropriate content, right? And then usually they'll give you a response. They'll be like, yeah, we found that this was spam, it's been removed, right? Or no, this doesn't actually violate our guidelines, and they'll let you know. But definitely, that was a good question. Definitely seeking that information out. Like I said, cyberbullying.org has some information as well, if maybe, again, you don't even know where to start. The next thing, number 7, it says, if necessary, seek counseling, right? So your child may benefit from speaking with a mental health professional. Children prefer oftentimes to have dialogue with a third party, right? Who may be a little bit more objective than mom and dad, right? Or aunt or uncle, whoever's at home, or even their teachers. They're going to be like, well, they have to say that, right? They're my teacher. They have to say that. They're my mom. Or maybe they're taking this not in a way that I'd hoped, right? So if necessary, seek counseling, definitely. Number 8, if the bullying's based on race, sex, or disability, you can actually contact the Office of Civil Rights, right? So the U.S. Department of Education takes those cases very seriously. If children are limited or restricted in their ability to learn and thrive at school because of discrimination. So that's even something like, again, when I was researching this, I was like, I didn't even think to do that, right? But definitely, if it's one of those things, you have that opportunity to make that report. Contacting the police when physical threats are involved. Most states have laws related to online threats, and law enforcement can assist in these cases, either informally or formally. And you can contact your local law enforcement officials, right? And they may even have some more information. I know, like here, I'm in San Angelo. I know that SAPD, some of the officers will even come and talk to kids about like, oh, this is what can happen, right? When you're making these types of threats or when you're sharing this kind of content. So definitely not being afraid to get their opinions involved as well. Number 10, implementing measures to prevent it from reoccurring. So if your child's being bullied through social media, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, whatever it might be, sometimes it's setting up privacy controls based on, again, how old they are, what's age appropriate, and encouraging them to keep talking, right? Definitely always wanting to do those. So those are 10 things that we can do when our children are being cyberbullied.
So Alexis, I wanted to ask something.
Sure.
I know the pandemic's changed a lot of things as far as like who's allowed in the schools, this and that. But I remember there used to be a police program that would go into the school and talk to kids about drugs. I think it was called DARE. But so I was wondering if there's anything like that provided through the schools, through the police department, or someone who's familiar with the cyberbullying and all this information you're giving us. It would be great to have something like that in the schools.
Yeah, definitely. So like I said, I do know Region 15, we serve quite a few. Every school has a safety team, and that might be something, reaching out to them and seeing that if they have some education that they might want to provide, like you said, within the schools. Like I said, I know our law enforcement here has done some things in some of our smaller rural schools where they've said, I've gone out and I've talked to these schools about, again, what can happen. And if that's something that you're interested in, definitely something that I can get you in contact with someone who might be able to have like a more specific answer for you and what might be available in your specific area. Because Virginia, where are you at?
I'm here in San Angelo.
You're here in San Angelo too?
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
But I mean, through our program, we provide services to 7 counties. So I could actually reach out to those counties too, because I think it's important that all schools have more education on that.
Definitely. And like I said, all of this information is really important. And I will be giving you a handout that has even more resources. And there are different resources like specifically for educators and educational settings. This one, again, I kind of geared more towards parents and what they can do. But definitely on that handout, there will be links to sites that will be more helpful with that information. So we did talk about what to do when our kid is cyberbullied, but I also mentioned earlier, it's a cycle. And sometimes we have to be ready and acknowledge the fact that our kids can be cyberbullies themselves. Greg just shared a great link from Health and Human Services. And so it's a pretty comprehensive list of things that we might use in schools. Thanks, Greg. But yeah, so looking at what to do when our child might be a cyberbully, right? When they're cyberbullying others. That's a tough thing, right? As a parent. So the first thing we want to do is acknowledge the issue, accepting the reality that our kid could even do something like that they could be involved in behaviors that are hurting other people. Instead of trying to rationalize, trivialize, or ignore the problem, right? Or take it into our own hands, right? We just need to acknowledge the issue and accept that reality. The second thing is to remain calm, right? That's one of the steps on when our kids being cyberbullied as well, right? Is remain calm, making sure that we are being level-headed, without demonizing, right? Disrespecting or judging our kid, right? I think a lot of times we're our own biggest critics. And as parents, we can be the biggest critics of our kids too sometimes. So making sure that we remain calm and remember that it's not necessarily like the kid that's the problem, it's the behavior, right? And we can always, change behavior. Number 3 says keeping an open line of communication. So many youth engage in cyberbullying as a result of retaliation, right? Someone else did something first. So making sure that your kids know that they can come to you to discuss issues that they're having with their peers. Give children the opportunity and skill set to solve interpersonal problems. And then number 4, stop the bullying, right? So that's our goal. That's our number 1 goal, is to end it and hope that it never happens again, right? Ensure that all instances of bullying are stopped immediately, regardless of who started it. So even if it is a retaliation thing, we're going to stop that, right? That right there, nip it in the bud, because nobody deserves to be mistreated for any reason, right? And number 5, understand the root of the problem. So a common saying is, hurt people, right? It's critical to identify the reason or reasons, multiple, right, that a child might act out in this way, right? It's unhealthy. It's an unhealthy way of coping with stress sometimes, right? So let's identify what that stress is. But again, are they themselves being victimized? Is it that there's no rules, right? Are there no rules in place on what it is that when we're allowed to be on the internet? Is there no, rules for sanctions to deter them from bullying other people? Try to get to the bottom of the issue. Number 6, it says investigate, right? So we want to take measures to thoroughly find out the extent of our child's bullying, right? It could span over multiple environments and websites and apps, or it could be just very direct and observable, but definitely want to work to understand what it is. Number 7, we want to make sure that our children understand how our targets feel. Definitely, right? Hopefully we want to always try and raise some empathetic children, right? So making sure that they understand how the target might feel. Number 8, set up parental controls. Again, at some point, right, we can't control everything as parents, but making sure that we're monitoring our kids' online activities formally and informally on what's age appropriate, and then sharing your concerns, right? If this happens, right, you're not the only parent that's ever faced this type of problem. Connecting with other people and making sure that everyone's rallying around the issue. And then staying educated, right? And if you're here, you're already making an attempt to do that. So that's awesome. And making sure that even though we're living busy lives, that we're really trying to keep on top of new technologies and sites that our kids might be on, and how they're interacting with other people. So we mentioned resources. One resource that if you're looking about like, how should I talk to my kids about being online? This is actually from the Federal Trade Commission. They have some information about how to chat with your kids about being online. I actually have, see, there you can see it now, like a little booklet. I have multiple in my office. They're free. If you're in an education setting and you're thinking like, hey, maybe some of my parents might benefit from this, you can order it online. It's free. And it also, you'll see the heads up in the back. And that one is actually for kids. So that's something like a kid can pick up and read, like, this is how I should probably engage online. And they also are available in Spanish. I have those as well too. And so I thought that was pretty cool. And again, that information will be listed in the resource guide that I will give you. So here's some more. So the Cyberbullying Research Center, they have some really great information. We talked about school safety earlier. The Texas State, right? The Texas School Safety Center, so that's through Texas State. They have a lot of good information. They even have a program that a teen can go in through that talks about sexting, like a little like class that they can take. And so Texas State puts out a lot of information as far as safety is concerned for K through 12 schools in the state of Texas, and they have a lot of good information there for individuals as well. Stopbullying.gov, of course, that's going to be a really good resource. I mentioned the Federal Trade Commission has these little booklets along with some other information. The Texas Attorney General's website. This lady right here in this little picture on the screen, I actually attended a webinar of hers not too long ago. And so she's a privacy advocate and a mother of three living in Silicon Valley. And so she has a YouTube series that talks about like how we can help our kids engage online. And it's like really quick videos. So it's not like an hour-long presentation from me, right? So it might be a little bit easier to digest in small snippets. And so her work is really awesome too. And she even gets into, at least she did in her webinar about some more like legalities of certain things. And so she was an awesome resource as well. And then I also will list my references. So like everything that was there, and we have a few minutes. I do want to be respectful of your time. I didn't know if you had any questions, concerns, comments about cyberbullying.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you, Alexis, because I'm probably way older than you are. So I was real unfamiliar with a lot of these sites. So it's very helpful, and I try to keep up as much as I can, but my gosh, every day there's something new. I love technology, but I'm scared of it too, because it can be very harmful if not used the way it needs to be used, or the way it's designed to be used. So I work with a lot of kids that are dealing with a lot of these issues, and bullying in general at school, or just bullying, cyberbullying. You never know what's going on. So I really loved the signs to look for as to when they're being cyberbullied. I like that. That was very helpful.
Well, awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that feedback. And yeah, like I said, there's a lot of resources out there and things that we can look at. I would say like the Cyberbullying Research Center has like probably one of the more comprehensive things when I looked at just like things for individuals, right? It has anything from like a parent perspective, an educator perspective. It has things, again, not just on cyberbullying, but like sexting, things like that as well. And like I said, Texas State has that own kind of like curriculum that a kid can go through. And it talks about, we heard digital footprint, but it actually refers to it as a digital fingerprint, because footprints, right, get wiped away, but like it's your fingerprint that you're leaving online, right? Like those things are, while we might not think so, are permanent, right? Someone somewhere, right? Like if needed, they could find that. They can find what it was that you posted. And I think that kind of goes back to the title again, like these things, these words that we're putting out there, these images that we're putting out there, can be really impactful and can be impactful in a negative way. Again, sticks and stones can break our bones, but posts can hurt us as well. And these are things that may stay out on the internet forever, right? No matter how hard we try. And so I think that's why it's really an important like topic of discussion and topic of prevention as well.
Alex, and I was just gonna say, and I think and I agree completely with what everybody has said and your points. I think one of the biggest thing is to encourage children, students, because a lot of times, just like Miss Virginia said, we may not always go into their websites or their Snapchats or Instagrams. And so we're not aware of things that they're experiencing. And I know that a lot of the time the children will have that mentality of, I don't want to be a snitch.
Mm.
Even if somebody's hurting me, or somebody said something negative about me, or somebody did something, it's still with that mentality of, what is it? Snitches bring stitches, or
Yes.
whatever that little slogan is. So I think it's just having those conversations with, even your own children to say, hey, if somebody's doing something to you or somebody posted something about you, have that confidence to come in and share it with me so that together we can figure out a solution. Because sometimes they just keep it inside because they don't want to tell you, they don't want to hurt you, they don't want to alarm us as parents. So I think,
or maybe they're embarrassed sometimes.
yes,
Definitely. Absolutely. And I do think, like you said, it's encouraging them, right? Like prevention is really the best strategy. We talked about like, these are some things you can do, or like talk to the schools, but really prevention is having that communication, right? That open line of communication with a trusted adult, and making sure that we can be that person as well. Another thing that we want to do is to model that behavior as well. We want to model the behavior that we want to see. Like, again, I'm an adult on social media. I see people on social media that, again, as adults, we're not always nice to each other, right? And then we're asking our kids to be nice and post nice things. And so that's definitely a thing, keeping that line of communication, modeling those things that we want to see, and definitely just encouraging them that they can talk to us, that we're going to hopefully, right, be that calm person that they can come to share these things with, and to destigmatize it, right? Like we just talked about how, like, we're looking at like 1 in 10 of our kids here in Texas. I think nationally it's like 1 in 5 actually report, like across genders and everything like that, that they've been cyberbullied, right? And so definitely something that we want to encourage kids to be able to come forward with. Thank you. This is that, Ms. Adams.
One of the things that I would never like for my child to be cyberbullied, but we also talk in my household, like I would die if I find out that you were the cyberbully. You had a slide earlier of like, if you're online for 3 hours plus, you're more likely to get cyberbullied, and there's these signs to look out for. But what are the signs? Would that still apply for, like, what are the signs to look to see if your child's the one that's doing it? So if I minimize the time that my child has, and more than likely he or she is not going to be the cyberbully, right? Or what are the signs?
Yeah, like I said, those, and we can go back to that slide. But those slides kind of go both ways, right? That's just the signs, like if you're dealing with a cyberbully on either side. So if we're looking at extended periods of internet usage, if we are looking at, you know, again, anything relationship problems, like our kids more likely to be a bully too, right? If they're being bullied, right? These things go kind of either way, right? And like, again, if they're looking jumpy, right? Because I'm behind them, maybe they're doing something that they might not be comfortable with me seeing. Or again, appearing angry or depressed on the computer. Again, these are things that can kind of go either way. These are signs that you might see in the bully or the victim. And remember that a lot of times, like, we have cyberbully victims, right? So they're both initiating, and experiencing the harassment. But yes, I like with anything, right? Limiting access, right, is going to limit like the probability, right, that that's going on for sure. Well, anything else? We have 5 minutes. I think we did pretty good on time.
Thank you, Alex. Can I share? Here, I'm going to stop recording.